and beside Him there is none else. There is an outcry of confidence. It rests in the reality that we're God's people. Though poor and needy I may be, but I trust in God who loveth me. All my failures He does see, but His grace great. His great grace hears my plea. He is the God who hears and answers prayer. Let me say the outcry of confidence. We see the oppressed, we see the oppressors of the oppressed. And as I said in Psalm 11, verse number 2, we saw the weapons of this wicked crowd. They bend their bow, they make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privily shoot at the upright of heart. Psalm 12 shows us the walk of the wicked, where they walk, on every side, and why they walk, because the vilest men are exalted. And let me say, when we put people in positions that live wickedly and vilely, God sees it, but God, we have already said, well, I want wickedness. Let me say, when you put people in places that they ought not be, when you say, and please, do not get angry at me, but God says that God has a problem with whoremongers. God has a problem with men who are effeminate and try to be women, and has a problem with women who want to be men. And yet, if we look at what's going on around us, they're putting them in high places in our country. I say our country's confused when a boy doesn't even know what bathroom to go into. But that's a different thing. I'm not preaching on that. Psalm 10, though, deals with the ways of the wicked and the workers of the wicked. And I will see the ways of the wicked, three things. I will see the persecutions of the wicked. Do you see that in verse number 1 or 2? The wicked in his pride does persecute the poor. He goes after and bites and devours and tries to destroy those that are unable to fight on their own behalf. They're saying, listen, you've already been beaten. We're going to beat you down and keep beating you down. And we're going to beat you down until you can't get up. And then we'll kick you when you're down. God tells us in verse number 5 that they are grievous. The ways of the wicked. As persecution are grievous. Not only do I find them as grievous, thy judgments are far above out of his sight. For all his enemies, he puffeth at them. He tells us in verse number 5. I tell you what, they're godless. God is not in all of his thoughts. They're godless. And they're graceless. He puffs at his enemies. That is the oppressors. The way of the oppressors is persecution. But not only do I find the way of the oppressors as persecution, but verse 3, I find the way of the oppressor is promoting self and promoting sinners. For the wicked boasts of his heart's desire, and blesses the covetous, whom the Lord abhorreth. Those who want to be and want to have things that ain't there. That's covetous. And that's what they do. They promote self. My way is okay because I want to do it my way. Let me say, your way ain't okay if it is not the way of righteousness. There's only one way that is okay. And that's the way of God. The way of holiness. That's the only way that is okay. They promote it. We find they're persecuting. We find them promoting self. we find him promoting sin. And then we find the ponderings of his ways in verse number 4. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. I believe it is chapter number 14. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Now I am not correcting our King James Bible, for our King James Bible put in italicized words that there is in chapter 1 or chapter 14, verse number 1. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God, because the fool has said in his heart before that, no God. He said he's not in all his thoughts. He said, I won't think on God. I don't want God. I'll deny there is a God. Psalm 10 lets you know their ponderings, the ways of the wicked. So I look at the workers of the wickedness, the description of the wicked. And let me say, three groups three oppressors of God's people who want revival. And I will see these things. Number one, we will see Satan is the oppression. Number two, I will find society is an oppression. And number three, self is our number one oppression. But I see all three of these. They all fit the description. Watch this. It's the description of Satan. Verse number 8. He sitteth in lurking places of the villages. In the secret places does he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor. He lieth in wait as a lion in his den. As a roaring lion walking about, seeking whom he may devour. Satan. That roaring lion. That one that's sitting there just looking, waiting for a chance to pounce on you. Let me say, he will hold you down. If you allow him to shoot those fiery darts into your heart, into your head. Put on the helmet of salvation. Put on the breastplate of righteousness. Do not let those fiery darts in. I will say, Satan is described here as he entices the poor with his snares. Verse number 9 we find, he lieth and waits secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth and waits to catch the poor. He's saying, I'm setting out traps. I'm setting out traps. And let me say, Satan has all kinds of traps. Let me just tell you this. He does not just entice the poor with snares, but he excites the poor with the strong ones. He crouches and humbleth himself that the poor may fall by his strong ones. He lets somebody else do the work, which will bring us to society. A society that's against God, that believes that it's okay to not be okay, and that we have no right to preach against sin. Now let me say, we have no right to pound on sinners. We have no right to beat them up. But we do have a right. No, we don't have a right. We have a responsibility to preach against sin. We have a responsibility to preach against sin. And yet they will get out there and they'll say that is hate speech. When you say the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all nations that forget God, every nation that forgets God, they will be turned into hell. If they walk in the paths of unrighteousness, if they exalt those who are unholy, unholy and unrighteous, and they let them be their idols. Let me say, society, the strong one. Now, and society's out there to destroy us. And the problem is, they set snares by getting us to go after, me and Miss Melissa talked about this the other day. They get us to go after things that really are issues, that they're right about. They're going about it for the wrong reasons, but they're right about some things. I will tell you this, racism is wrong. And so if they say we need, and not government, but society says we need to get rid of books and movies that promote racism is okay, and that people laugh at and see racism, and they say that, hey, help yourself. Why am I jumping on the bandwagon if they can't get rid of those? That they can't. Now I have a problem with government getting rid of them. But if the business market says, I won't support you, I'm against you, we will put banners up everywhere saying how bad you are because you promote this book, that's called capitalism, and that's called okay with me. I don't like it. But it's the right way to go about it. It's wrong for the government. You have a right to the press, freedom of the press. You have a right in this country for the freedom of speech. But if society says it's not acceptable, unless you can say it's against God, it's okay for them to do it. If you say it's against God, then you stand your ground and preach. Now I told somebody the other day, if y'all want to keep them books being printed, buy the copyrights. Print them. I said, I was telling my wife, said, I've never bought those books from one of these authors. I never thought about it. Now somebody's telling me I need to buy them all. I'm like, why? I didn't buy them when my kids were young. Why would I buy them now? To get in a fight? Racism's wrong. Amen. They excite the poor with the strong ones. They will come against you for everything. They will tell you it's hate speech for you to say that sin is wrong. They will come against you and they will excite you. And you'll say, and let me say this. He entices the poor with snares. He excites the poor by his strong ones. And he eyes the poor for the slaughter. Verse number 8. He sitteth in lurking places. In the secret places he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor. He is looking for a way. Satan is looking for a way. Society is looking for a way. And your self-nature is looking for a way to destroy your spirit nature. They're contrary one to the other. Let me say this, society, they ensnare you and they enslave you by saying, we're going to put you out if you don't bow to our way. They did it to Daniel. They did it to those, the men we call Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They did it to them. They said, either you bow or you burn. Either you bow to the king's way or you get thrown into a den of lions. They did not bow and they did not burn. But society will tell you, if you don't do it our way, if you speak against that, then you will not be allowed to participate in anything else. Let me say, Daniel still had his position, and the king exalted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because they did not bow, they did not burn. But can I say they got blessed by getting in the presence of the one who is it looks like the Son of God. And the king said, there's something different. The Son of God. I want him. Joseph was oppressed. His brethren oppressed him. Potiphar oppressed him. Threw him into prison. But God was with him. Society's going to try to oppress us, ensnare us, and enslave us. And in self gets the idea God doesn't remember us. Look at verse number 11. He has said in his heart, God has forgotten. He hideth his face, he will never see it. Self says, God's not. God has forgotten us. He made us, and now he's left us. Can I say, saints go through that sometimes. That they do not rest in the fact that God will never leave them nor forsake them. They rest in feelings that God has forgotten. He doesn't know where I'm at, but he knoweth the way that I take. God doesn't remember. God doesn't care. And God doesn't see. The oppression called sin. They say in their heart, thou will not require it. Because Satan has blinded society and self into thinking it's okay. We can get away with sin. To say that righteousness is wrong. They call evil good and good evil. So I leave you to this thought, the opportunities for the oppressed. And I am done. You can examine self. You can ask God. Here, let me turn back over here because I want us to see this. I don't want us to miss this. Oh, I should have just left my Bible open to it. But I didn't want us to see this. It would just be a moment. But examine self. And what's he says? What does he say? He says, break the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Seek out his wickedness till thou find none. You can examine self. Search me, O God, and try me, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and break or pulverize the power of sin in my life. Sin is trying to destroy me and trying to get me to think that it's okay. God, break the arm of my wicked self. Not necessarily, God, I want you to break the arm of society. I want you to break the arm of Satan. But I want you to break the arm of that sin that so easily besets me. Pulverize its power. Break its arm. Ask you can examine self and asking God to search you and try you. And see if there be a wicked way in you. And then you can pulverize the power of sin. And then you can say, God, not only do that, but purge me from private and presumptuous sin. Is that not what he says? Is that not what he says? Break out the arm of the wicked and seek out his wickedness till thou find none. Purge me. Keep searching me until there's nothing left. You might not be able to purge it out of society. We might, or I say God could. But he certainly can purge it out of the sight if we let him. Would we let him break the arm of sin in our lives? That's what he talks about. Remember, if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. If thy right arm offend thee, cut it off. God, would you break that arm off so that I don't sin in that way anymore? And then, Lord, take away my desire for that sin. Search it until you find none. Keep searching me. Keep getting down there. Every crack and crevice. The bitterness in my heart. The boastfulness in my heart. Keep searching. Examine self. Exalt Christ. You have the opportunity to examine self. You have the opportunity to exalt Christ. Here's what it says. You can exalt Christ as your ruler. The Lord is King forever and ever. You can exalt Christ as righteous. Verses 17 and 18. He has heard the desire of them. He's a God who hears and answers prayer. He is our helper. He's our ever-present help or our very present help in trouble. Verse number 14. Thou hast seen it, for thou beholdest mischief spite to requite it with thy hand. The poor committeth himself to me. Thou art the helper of the Father. Exalt him to his rightful position as ruler, to his righteous position as the one who hears, as the one who helps, and as our revival. Verse number 17. Thou wilt prepare their heart. Let them know, God, hey, you can do that. That's an opportunity for you. When you find yourself as the one that's oppressed, you can put God in his right place. Get the right focus on God. And then you express hope. If you find yourself as Job did, as David did, when you find, you say, why art thou cast down, O my soul? Why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God. Express hope. And then the world sees you singing and praising God. They see you rejoicing in the Lord always. And guess what happens? Something changes in them, and society sees that you, even though you've been oppressed and suppressed and depressed, can now be one who is impressed with God. Oh, as you express his holiness, his righteousness, his purity. As God brings you deliverance in your heart. Not necessarily in your situation, but in your heart. From the powers of Satan, of society, and of sin. Lord, I pray that you would help.